Remember those innocent-looking toys from your childhood? The ones that brought endless joy? Well, some of them were secretly dangerous, even deadly. In this video, we're counting down the 10 most hazardous toys of the 1980s, the ones that sparked lawsuits, hospital visits, and nationwide bans. From lawn darts that pierced skulls to chemistry sets that could have blown up your house. So, how many of these did you own? And more importantly, how did you survive? Number 10. Lawn darts. Imagine backyard fun that involved throwing a metal spike into the air and hoping it landed in a plastic ring target. Sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen, right? That's exactly what lawn darts were. In the 80s, they were marketed as a family game. Kids would hurl these weighted darts into the air. Except instead of always hitting the target, they sometimes hit other kids. Reports show that by 1987, thousands of injuries and at least 3 child deaths were linked to lawn darts. Parents begged for them to be banned. And in 1988, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission finally pulled them off the shelves. It's wild to think about now, but for a few years, this toy was literally a sharp weapon marketed as family fun. Number 9. Easy Bake Oven. The Easy Bake Oven sounded harmless. A tiny oven for kids to bake cookies and cakes. What could go wrong? Well, plenty. The early versions of this toy used a 100-watt light bulb to heat up the oven. Kids were essentially sticking their fingers into a mini heater. Countless children burned themselves trying to retrieve their delicious treats. By the mid-80s, consumer groups were already warning parents. And believe it or not, the dangers didn't stop in the 80s. In the 2000s, another version of the oven was recalled after reports of children getting their hands trapped inside and burned. For a toy that was supposed to teach kids the joy of cooking, the Easy Bake Oven ended up teaching them the importance of first aid. Number 8. DIY chemistry kits. Back in the 80s, kids weren't just playing, they were experimenting. Toy makers sold chemistry sets that included actual chemicals for mixing, bubbling, and sometimes even creating small explosions. Sounds fun, right? Until you realize these kits often didn't come with proper safety instructions. Some included things like potassium permanganate or sulfur, substances that could burn skin or ignite when handled improperly. There are even stories of kids setting off smoke alarms, staining carpets permanently, or worse, inhaling dangerous fumes. Today's science kits are mostly safe and watered down, but back then, it was basically, here's a box of chemicals, kid. Don't blow up the house. Number 7. Early electronic toys. The 1980s was the dawn of handheld electronic toys. Things like Simon, Speak, and Spell, and early game devices were incredibly popular. But here's the problem: batteries. Some of these toys had poorly designed battery compartments, which meant acid leakage, overheating, and in some cases, burns. Parents would open the back panel and find white powder leaking everywhere. Kids, being curious, sometimes touched it. Or worse, put it in their mouths. There were even cases of batteries exploding if the toy was left on too long or exposed to heat. Safe to say, the future of electronic play was exciting, but also a little bit hazardous in the early days. Number 6. Skip It. Skip It was simple. You strapped a plastic ring around your ankle, spun the ball around, and jumped over it as it swung. Sounds like fun, until you realize that if you mistimed your jump, you were basically whacking yourself in the shin with a hard plastic ball. Kids ended up with bruises, twisted ankles, and even broken bones. Doctors reported cases of kids falling face first after tripping over the toy. Later versions added a softer ball and safety improvements. But in the 80s, Skip It was a landmine waiting for a misstep. Still, despite the injuries, it was insanely popular. Pain and fun often went hand in hand in the 80s. Number 5. Micro Machines. Micro Machines were tiny, detailed toy cars that you could collect by the dozens. They were small enough to fit in your pocket, which also made them small enough to get stuck in your throat. Choking hazards were a huge issue, and several sets were recalled. Some parents also complained about kids stepping on them. Picture Lego pain, but even sharper and slipperier. There were even reports of kids accidentally swallowing wheels or accessories. And yet, Micro Machines remained a smash hit. Their commercials with the fast-talking pitchman John Mosqueda Jr. are still legendary. But if you had little siblings in the house, these cars were less of a toy and more of a trap. Number 4. Cabbage Patch Kids. The dolls themselves, totally safe. The craze around them, a whole different story. In 1983, when Cabbage Patch Kids hit toy shelves, the demand was unlike anything the industry had ever seen. Parents lined up overnight, mobs stormed stores, and full-blown riots broke out in toy aisles. People were trampled, fights erupted, and police were called to break up crowds. News headlines at the time described it as Cabbage Patch Madness. The dolls became symbols of consumer culture gone wild. It wasn't the toy itself that was dangerous. It was the lengths people went to just to get their hands on one. Number 3. G.I. Joe. Action figures with accessories. Action figures were king in the 80s, and none were more popular than G.I. Joe. But unlike other figures, G.I. Joes came with tons of tiny accessories. Guns, knives, rockets. The danger? Choking hazards. Small pieces could be swallowed, and some had sharp edges that cut skin. Parents reported stepping on them and getting stabbed by little plastic rifles. Not to mention, kids were launching plastic missiles at each other across bedrooms. Despite the risks, G.I. Joe figures were massively popular, and the cartoon made sure every kid wanted a full squad. Number 2. Nerf blasters. Nerf was known for being the safe toy. After all, it was just foam. But the first Nerf dart blasters were surprisingly powerful. Kids aiming at each other's faces led to black eyes, bruises, and in some cases, scratched corneas. Warnings on the boxes eventually told kids not to aim at the face, but of course that's exactly what everyone did. Nerf wars were epic, but they often ended with a trip to the freezer for an ice pack. Number 1. Teddy Ruxpin and experimental electronics. Teddy Ruxpin looked adorable, an animatronic bear that read stories through cassette tapes. But early models sometimes malfunctioned. Eyes got stuck, mouths jammed, and some overheated. Kids described him as creepy when his voice slowed down from low batteries, turning him into something out of a horror movie. On top of that, other experimental 80s electronic toys, like toy hovercrafts and knockoff robots, were reported to overheat, spark, or even shock users. The dream of high-tech toys was here, but it wasn't always safe. The 1980s didn't just make toys, they made survival challenges disguised as playthings. These weren't failures of design. They were products of their time, an era before worst-case scenarios dictated safety standards. Today, these banned relics tell us more about 80s culture than any textbook could. Check your attic. Dig through childhood photos. How many of these did you own? Let us know in the comments. And subscribe now, because next time, we're asking what are some classic 80s TV shows worth watching today.